Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a couple of topics in this live stream. And as we usually do it, we'll open the space up for the community for participation, input, and also if you have any questions for myself as well. But we're going to be talking about a couple of things. Firstly, when it comes to Gaza, we're going to be talking about Gaza, Lebanon, the potential attack on Iran, what the United States is doing now with Israel, them supplying Israel with a THAAD anti-ballistic missile system with the US crew operating it in the Israeli territories. Israel is considering it to be, or at least reporting it to be, the first time that the US is doing that, or they're allowing the US to do that. What does that mean? Have we seen a deal between Netanyahu and Iran Netanyahu and the Biden administration before Israel got the system? And does that mean that the attack of Israel on Iran is imminent, or does it mean that the United States supplied it to them on the basis that they would avoid certain locations in Iran? We'll talk about all of that in this live stream. However, I'm going to be starting off with Gaza. In Gaza, firstly, Israel is considering it now to be a secondary front. Gaza is no longer the most important front. This is very significant. Now, they are considering Gaza the secondary front, but they are still having certain attempts when it comes to North Gaza. In particular, we're hearing about Jabalia. They are literally starving people now again. They are banning any sort of food and aid from certain locations across most parts of North Gaza. And they're targeting Jabalia in particular. They're telling everyone to evacuate and leave. But of course, the people don't trust them because, well, they left and they went to other places and they were targeted as they were leaving and when they left and in those safe zones. So from the Palestinians' perspective, they're nowhere is safe. Therefore, I'm not going to leave. And they are still suffering tremendously when it comes to Gaza. I mean, today we've had the Al-Qassam brigades exploding a tunnel opening in Israeli forces in eastern Rafah. Again, an area they said they have been done with for such a long time, but they've done this today with them. So as you can see, the Palestinian resistance is still exploding these booby-trap tunnels. That's alongside their attacks on the genocide forces in Gaza. This was an explosion of an opening of one of their tunnels where, of course, they lured the Israeli forces in, making them feel as if they're, finding something out, only to explode it with the forces. And then you saw the Israelis evacuating their killed and wounded, meaning, well, that they are still there fighting them. nothing from the dismantling, nothing from the destruction, nothing from achieving any of the war objectives, nothing from returning people safely back to their homes, nothing from prospect of a hopeful solution or anything of the sort. And the Palestinian people are still standing up against Israel. And of course, we're seeing the same thing from Lebanon. From Lebanon today, Hezbollah still had their regular attacks on the northern parts of Israel, including Haifa, of course, now it's a norm, and dozens of missiles. In addition to Hezbollah saying that they targeted the 7,200 base in an area called Zvulun, if I'm not mistaken, where the Israelis have facilities to have weapons in and ammunition. Again, likewise with Lebanon, no answer to the actual threat. You see, they're targeting people and they are causing destruction, but they are not, I'm talking about Israel, they are not providing an answer to the problem that they consider to be a problem. And again, we constantly talk about the great gap between the Israeli declarations and objectives when it comes to what they want out of their military campaigns or genocides or mass murder or mass destruction or targeted assassinations to what they get in return. And one must ask here then, if it's not bringing you your requests and your demands and your objectives, then what is the point behind them? And then every person can analyze and start to think, why are they actually doing that if they are not reaching their objectives and reaching their targets? So Hezbollah, again, a very intense day on Israel, targeting all of these locations in southern Haifa, and of course alongside all of the northern parts. They also sent a squadron of suicide drones on Ain Margaliot. We spoke about the Zvulun military industries base, and they also attacked multiple bases in the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. They continue to target gatherings of Israeli troops and their vehicles with rocket salvos, and they targeted Masgav Am, and they targeted bulldozers, and they targeted multiple other locations alongside the borders between Lebanon and Israel. So Hezbollah are again continuing very intensely. People, some people are talking about potential solutions coming out, talks between the American administration and certain officials in Lebanon. Some people in Lebanon are saying that we received an okay from Iran to get a ceasefire and what have you. But again, all of that is talk. What we are seeing is what's happening on the ground, and that's why we focus on what's happening actually on the ground, because during the most hopeful periods, we still had people fighting, we still had Israeli aggression, and that did not stop. So you cannot ignore what's happening based on any hopeful talks coming from anyone, from any side. And again, the actual implementation of the declared political or military requests or demands or illusions, whatever they are, from Israel, are always interpreted on the ground, and on the ground they are failing. And now this leads me to the next topic that I want to talk to you about. They are getting the THAAD system from the United States. THAAD is an anti-ballistic missile system that is similar to an extent to Arrow 3. The only difference is that Arrow 3 is exo-atmospheric, THAAD is endo-atmospheric, and THAAD actually has less of a range. However, it uses kinetic energy. Israel is hoping that it could be a bit more sophisticated when it comes to targeting any potential missiles coming from Iran. Therefore, the US administration brought the THAAD system and the US troops to operate it inside of Israel, meaning we have now direct confirmed participation from American troops inside of Israel, albeit for what could be labeled as defensive measures coming from Israel, not attack measures, because it is at the end of the day an anti-ballistic missile system that comes from the United States. So we had this report, very short in Times of Israel, saying that, of course, the title was US troops to reportedly operate THAAD anti-ballistic missile system in Israel. And they said the US will deploy the THAAD anti-ballistic missile system in Israel, according to reports by Channel 12 News and Army Radio that describe the move as part of preparations for the expected Israeli response to Iran's recent missile attack. Channel 12 News says the advanced missile defense system will be operated by American troops on Israeli soil. This is an important development. The reason being is it means that there is something going on in the background while we have this update. What's going on in the background? Well, the threats to have an attack on Iran. What about this attack on Iran? Clearly, we're having a lot of back and forth between the Israelis and the Americans. Israel had multiple meetings. We had a cabinet meeting. We did not have a declaration and further elaboration on that cabinet meeting, and we did not receive information that there was a confirmation in that meeting on how to respond or somewhat of an agreement. There was no agreement so far about the shape, the level, the intensity, the location, and the timing of the Israeli attack on Iran, the aggression on Iran. It's not a response, it's an aggression. The terminology is very important. Whatever Israel is doing in the region is aggression and recklessness and an expansion of war crimes that they are committing against the Palestinians and the Lebanese. Iran is the one responding, and the others are the ones responding, and responding in a very conservative manner if we compare that response to the scale of war crimes that the Zionist entity commits against the other people. It's very important to highlight these things when it comes to terminology. Israel is the aggressor. Israel is the one attacking. They are not responding. They are not defending themselves. They're doing none of that. They are increasing their aggression and recklessness against the countries in the region. Now we have this thought, meaning we have some sort of dynamics when it comes to the progress of this attack on Iran. One of the probabilities that we could have from this system being sent is, firstly, Biden sat with Israel or his administration or officials from the Biden administration, and they told them, listen, we will further increase our support for you because you've got a massive beating last time, and we will send the THAAD system in hope that it could do something. That's not guaranteed, by the way, because again, you have problems when it comes to range, the speed in comparison to the Iranian hypersonic or supersonic missiles, all sorts of stuff. But it could add to, of course, Israel's ability to intercept some of these missiles. All right. The United States administration could have told Israel, we will send you the THAAD system, will send you the crew as well, but in return, you're not going to attack, for example, the nuclear facilities or the oil refineries in Iran. That's a scenario. Again, these are probabilities. That's nothing like confirmed or anything. This is just analyzing what's happening. Secondly, this is a confirmation that the United States hasn't really given Israel everything that it needs when it comes to defense if the THAAD wasn't there before. Well, unless that is, you definitely saw a grave failure when it comes to the recent interception following a massive Iranian success with their True Promise 2 campaign against Israel. But what's for sure is that we definitely have some progress. And that progress is we are heading towards an attack on Iran. Nothing is backing down. We definitely have an attack coming, and the United States is trying to support Israel as much as possible when it comes to this attack. How? When? We don't know that. But what we do know is the United States definitely dictated certain things when it comes to the Israeli response back in April. At the time, Biden told Benjamin Netanyahu, you got to win when it comes to the interception, take the win. Meaning, I'm not going to help you. And previously, he had also people from the US Army senior figures telling Netanyahu, we won't be participating with an attack on Iran, but we'll help you with defense. So at the time, we of course had this firework thing in northwestern Iran that Israel did not claim it did or took responsibility, anything of the sort, something that Iran could, of course, swallow and move forward with that. However, then we had the attacks in Tehran, we had the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, we had suspected ISIS attacks or claimed ISIS attacks that killed over 100 people in the past 10 months, by the way. That most likely Israel and the US is behind. However, Iran didn't take it in that manner because of the responsibility, who took responsibility and what have you. Fair enough, because if they want to respond, they need an official side to respond to. Iran considered these things and still does when it comes to international law and UN charters and UN resolutions as well. Meaning we have a progress when it comes to the attack. The attack of Israel on Iran is getting closer. The United States is very much fully involved in this attack on Iran. They are not sitting there as observers. What we're seeing in terms of calls for de-escalation is nothing but theater. Whoever distinguishes or differentiates between the United States and Israel is not reading everything in an accurate, correct manner. If you look into everything in detail, you will see that the United States is Israel and Israel is the United States. You will have minor disagreements here and there, but at the end of the day, what Israel is doing now, despite apparent rejection from the United States administration and certain officials in the Biden administration, they are in line with what Israel is doing. Why? Because firstly, the United States, if we want to talk about crimes and war crimes, well, they have committed far greater crimes than Israel. Secondly, it's not as if what Israel is doing goes against the United States policy in general when it comes to the Middle East so far, so long as nothing is getting totally out of control. Now, mind you, some people in the United States administration might be miscalculating and reading things improperly when it comes to that, but Israel is still doing it, and the United States still wants full hegemony in the Middle East or West Asia area, because it's a very important location, and they also want to send strong, solid messages to China and Russia that we have this under control. Don't try and challenge us in other arenas, and we're also coming for you. We're coming for you to continue the hegemony that we have globally. Meaning the attack from Israel on Iran is coming closer. They're fully in line with the United States. The US administration is probably trying to decrease the possibility of things getting out of hand, because it wouldn't be in anyone's interest. However, you are sitting with a reckless entity led by a sociopath and a bloodthirsty nation when it comes to Israel. These were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about. And the final thing was a small quote that we had from Pezeshkian and his meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. He made a statement when he reached Tehran. He said, my meeting with Russia's president lasted an hour. We discussed the bilateral agreements and expediting implementation of projects. We also discussed more active role by Russia on regional developments and serious reaction to Israeli crimes in Gaza and Lebanon, meaning that Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, is explicitly mentioning the possibility of an increased Russian involvement when it comes to the escalation coming from Israel. It's no longer just talk or, they're operating in the background. No, they are definitely there. Well, Israel is putting them there. Again, that could potentially be provoked by the United States, who wants to see, well, what you're capable of. What are you capable of? Show me. They want them to reveal their capabilities. There's a lot involved in all of this. But clearly, we're seeing more participation coming from Russia in the region. And now the Iranian president is confirming that. And these were the main things that I want to talk to you about in this live stream. Let me open the space up for all of the community for your participation. And again, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another show. As usual, if you have any questions or comments for me, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them with like a sign, a red sign or something, just so that I won't miss them, or just make it easier for me to reach them. Ramplans is saying Times of India put a video about 3,000 Israelis gone injured from Hezbollah missiles. Is that true? Commenters are denying. Well, anything to do with the levels of casualties when it comes to Israel, whether wounded or killed, is very much under heavy censorship. What we can only do is estimate based on certain evidence that's coming from the ground in Israel, certain leaks, certain verified information, what some troops might be saying, what people might be saying. But all of that will be speculative. It will be speculative. However, don't be surprised if the numbers are very big indeed. Amir Ryder is saying, a question, Salam, bro, sorry, joined a bit late. Maybe talked about the Iranian ministers defying Israel and landing in Lebanon. Yeah, we actually spoke about that when the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, landed in Beirut. For those of you who don't know, Israel declared military blockade on Lebanon, on all of Lebanon, and they are dictating who lands in the Beirut airport, Rafiq al-Hariri airport, and who doesn't. And they previously forced an Iranian plane to go back on its tracks, and they warned that any Iranian plane that would land would be subject to targeting. However, the Iranians defied that, meaning that firstly, they're not scared of Israel. Secondly, they are willing to put themselves at risk. Thirdly, well, we didn't have an Israeli response. It's as if they were challenging Israel. Go ahead, target the foreign minister, for example, and see what happens to you. They haven't done anything so far. Would they continue doing that? Or is it probable that they will definitely, or at some point, maybe attack a minister from Iran? They could do that. Nothing is surprising when it comes to them, but it doesn't look like the Iranian government is scared when it comes to that. Omar is saying, Mahmoud, do you think HB is preparing for a counterattack? I assume you mean Hezbollah. Hezbollah are preparing for an all-out war. And in my opinion, they prepared for something bigger than what they're in at the moment. And what they're doing now is conducting a very carefully calculated and very well organized campaign of response to Israel that is not the biggest thing or close to the biggest thing that you can see from Hezbollah. They're not trying to put up a show. They are trying to have this campaign and implement it in an effective manner on Israel to continuously, firstly, exhaust Israel militarily, harm their military capabilities, attack strategic locations, harm their economy, and create a sense of lack of certainty and lack of safety all across Israel now. And they are successfully doing all of that. Now, when it comes to something bigger, again, do they need to do something bigger? Many questions arise here. Do they need to go on many massive attack on Israel all at once to achieve certain objectives? These things are arguable. So far, they are conducting what they're doing successfully to a very large extent. Why? Because we're seeing the impact on Israel. They are not being dragged to have a massive attack on Israel that will, for example, lead to many people falling as casualties, being killed and what have you. Why? Because they have a purpose. What's their purpose? End the war, end the genocide in Gaza. But Israel doesn't want to do that. Israel constantly escalates. They expand their genocide. And they think that by their level of destruction and war crimes, they would force the other side into submission or to admit defeat or just give up. That's not happening. Clearly not happening. And it doesn't look like it is going to happen. Why? Because, the resistance front movements in the area, they're built differently. They are simply built differently, and they don't give up that easily despite all of this destruction, and they are willing to sacrifice from the top figure to the less senior figures in the people standing up against Israel, which has been evident from the previous assassinations that Israel has conducted. So I think they are preparing, but when or how will we see something bigger than what we saw so far? That would depend on their view of what the battlefield requires and whether that would be more effective than what they've done so far or not. And I hope that elaborates. And Sham Bailey saying, are you looking for a major escalation with Yanks participating with THAAD? No, I think it's just an important observation, because the fact that we're getting this from the United States, well, Israel is getting it alongside the crew to operate it, means there are progresses when it comes to the Israeli or anticipated Israeli aggression against Iran. And that also means the escalation is pretty likely to happen. How effective would that be? That's a separate question. They are assuming that adding THAAD to their or their air defense combo in Israel would increase the success rate. But again, all of that is in question. We're going to have to see once we have an attack from Iran and how that gets implemented inside of Israel and what the success rate would be. Traveler, Salam Mahmoud, did Netanyahu bug other world leaders' bathroom with listening devices, or was it just Boris Johnson? I don't know. The only thing we know is that Boris Johnson said that his bathroom, his toilet, was bugged after Netanyahu visited it. His team told him it was bugged. Did Netanyahu bug other toilets? We don't know. I wouldn't put it past him, though. And Studio Rainer, thank you for your super. You said, I think the US is freaked out. Iran destroyed Israel's economy, reputation, and their lies. I wonder if the US is using a similar model to project war. I think the United States, they're probably taken aback a bit by the scale and level of response when it comes to Israel. They're not used to their little beach child being treated in that manner. And they thought that we would have a level of intimidation when it comes to that. But freaking out, I'm not sure if they are freaking out. I mean, at the end of the day, the United States, they would deal with certain situations in in a certain way, of course. Now that certain way so far is supporting crime, supporting war crimes, supporting mass terror, and wreaking havoc in the region. The question is there, or will we see someone sane within this administration, that's assuming they will not resign at some point, who would come and say certain things or push to implement certain policies that would make any sense apart from just blindly supporting this genocidal entity for imperial reasons and for financial greed reasons. We haven't seen that yet. And when it comes to Iran, destroyed Israel's economy, reputation, and their lives, not just Iran, the Palestinian resistance and the Lebanese resistance too, of course, backed by Iran. And again, the United States doesn't like that, but tough luck, you will never always have a certain country in power and continue to be the only powerful country. It doesn't happen like that. The problem is I am seeing a behavior from the United States administration that is very unprofessional, immature, let alone malicious. And they're still continuing down that path. And also Stephen Borrowswell, thank you so much. And Sour Vodka, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoyed the chat. Let's see. Also, the great American military is becoming a joke since losing in Afghanistan. Yeah, but I mean, they portray that as just withdrawal, as if, 20 years later, without accomplishing our, again, declared mission or objective, we withdraw. $3 trillion later, we withdraw. Thousands of dead troops or cannon fodder later, we withdraw. Thousands of amputated people later, we withdraw. And guess what? The Taliban takes power the next day. So, yeah, I mean, it takes their credibility down a little bit. Anyone who observes the American military knows very well that you're talking about the oligarchic military, really, the corporate military, the financially motivated military, the elite greed military. No, not the military to protect you and your safety and your... and of course, the brainwashing starts from a young age when people play video games, and fighting wars, and then they go and implement that really on real people with the promise of having, prosperity and financial security, and will take care of your family and long story. But it is a joke. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending so much time and effort trying to make it look shiny. And Ralph, thank you for that. Let's go to your next question. And Studio as well, thank you again. It said, make no mistake, Iran's military action, their support of other resistance is not just about Israel. What if the US was lying about their economy, military, and demographics? What if the US can't win against Iran? No, I mean, from your first observation, I think the main problem is with the United States administration. So let's say Israel collapses tomorrow as an apartheid entity and Zionism collapses. We're still stuck with the US meddling and trying to cause problems. So it's not as if the United States administration would leave the Middle East all of a sudden alone. They're going to try and have a plan B, for, a new criminal entity to replace Israel. So when it comes to Iran, no, it's not just about the support, but the support is something big that they have been paying the price for, by the way. And Omar, thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. And Studio, again, remember, since Israel's creation, their number one objective was demographics. Based on Western data, the world is facing a demographic decline. If the US is lying and has a demographic issue. Well, I'm not entirely sure how the demographic issue in Israel would be linked directly to the demographic issue in the United States. Israel definitely does have a demographic issue. And ever since its inception, they based themselves or established themselves as a Jewish supremacy with a Jewish majority. That's why they expelled the Palestinian people and refused to allow them back in 1948 and 67, constantly make life hell for them in these areas to try and force them out of the state to continuously have a Jewish demographic superiority. The whole ethnic cleansing campaign attempt in Gaza is to do with their demographics too, because ever since 2015, the Palestinians between the Jordan River to the sea are a majority in compared to the Israeli Jews. So they want to treat that, right? So Israel started off with Gaza, then they'll go to the West Bank, and of course continue their expansion where they see fit and based on their priorities. How linked is that with the general demographic decline, or what is labeled as a demographic decline in certain locations? Because you don't have a decline everywhere. I don't see that as very much linked to the United States. I think it is definitely a big contributor to the actions that we're seeing now when it comes to Israel, however. Black Wire saying, Mahmoud, with the A300, A400 jet fighters, we'll see how good Israel's Air Force is. Yeah, I'm not sure if you mean S300 and 400, but yeah, absolutely. And it's not going to be a walk in the park, to say the least. And the United States will have to help Israel a lot if they really actually want to have an attack in Iran. If Israel found it slightly stretching it going to Yemen, which is straight away from the Red Sea and no issues from airspace and territorial airspace and what have you, with Iran, it's a much more complicated game. Anthony F., will Russia help Iran militarily? They are already helping Iran militarily. If you mean, will they participate directly if Iran is attacked to defend them on their behalf? No, that's not necessarily going to happen. Usually, if you talk about other countries' participation directly at war, you're talking about very later, much later stages. And again, if that is required, and if the country in question is indeed under threat from the aggressive side against their allied state or ally state, but they are already helping them militarily. Bujar is saying, Mahmoud, the fact that the entire world, including the US, are so hesitant, scared to attack Iran means they know and hide something huge about Iran capabilities. Well, anyone who observed the Iranian attack on the 1st of October, True Promise 2, anyone who viewed that as it is, of course, bypassing the propaganda and viewing the attack itself, knows why they hesitate and constantly try and downplay Iran's capabilities and act as if they somehow can take down Iran. Iran is a strong force, a force to be reckoned with, and a force to be considered, basically, and appreciated, and not to be underestimated. Their successful attack on Israel showed the whole world how sophisticated and advanced and powerful they are, and how easily they can bypass the most advanced, or what is labeled as the most advanced, air defense systems in the world, in the whole world. Arrow 3 and David Sling and the American interception and don't forget the aircraft carriers, they were there as well. So yeah, they are, but again, Iran has shown us that you are not joking when you talk about Iran. And Sean Hurl is saying, M, can you see Axis returning IOF around invade historic Palestine? I think the US in trouble over Ukraine. Yeah, I'll start with the second one. I think the US is in trouble over Ukraine. I think they are, because, well, some European countries and some in the European population are just getting sick and fed up with it. They're seeing the joke. You're talking about a corrupt puppet in the form of Zelensky, who, funny enough, supports genocide and supports everything that Russia is doing if Russia was called Israel. So Zelensky supports everything that Russia does if Russia was called Israel. Again, regardless of the Ukrainian people and the Russian people, because both people deserve liberty and freedom and basic human rights. But when it comes to Zelensky, we all know who Zelensky is. They're seeing him as a massive, ATM, right? He basically constantly requests money and gets the money. And guess what? That money goes to other countries too. So they start trading, and not using all of the weapons against Russia. Lots of corruption involved. And, anyone viewing it sees the level of corruption. Is it helping the Ukrainian people? No. They're going and dragging the Ukrainians from the neck to go and die for Zelensky, basically. They almost had a peace treaty and a ceasefire agreement before, again, the United States ordered Zelensky to go and attack Kursk. We were in an advanced stage of ceasefire talks between Ukraine and Russia. And we heard that from Hungary, and we heard that from other countries who were mediating. Funny enough, when we try and reach a ceasefire, the US goes and does something. Like what they're doing in the Middle East, like they're talking about de-escalating and hopeful stuff, and then they allow Netanyahu to get away with murder and channel more money for him. And then with the first one, can you see Axis turning around and invading historic Palestine? Yeah, that's possible, because we had Hamas before on the 7th of October. Hezbollah can, of course, do that. But I think, judging by how things are going, they are trying to let the things ripen before conducting big operations to do with the liberation of lands, for example, or the returning of Palestinian refugees. Because don't forget, if you're talking about the case of Lebanon, not only can Hezbollah invade Palestine, they can call the Palestinian refugees and tell them, look, there's a safe passage from this area. You can start going back to your homeland. And would anyone have any argument against that? You don't have any argument. You don't have any legal argument. UN resolutions support the right of the Palestinian refugees to return to their homes. And it would be a trouble to try and deal with that, I mean, internally when it comes to Israel. But again, things need to ripen before we start seeing scenarios such as this. Judging by how quickly things are moving now, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by seeing anything tomorrow. We've seen so much in the past year at such a fast pace that nothing would be really surprising. And Muhammad Yunus, thank you so much for your super. He says, Salam Mahmoud, you're exactly right. Israel is the 50th state of the United States. The evidence is overwhelming. They are the same thing, my friend. They are exactly the same thing. And the United States cannot hide its participation by simply saying we're trying to convince them or trying to, do something and reach any sort of peace. You can't convince me that you are proactively trying to take a peaceful position. Firstly, when you view two different people at a different level and prioritize people over other people. So number one, you view the Israelis as more supreme than the Palestinians. And that's the general Western elite theme when it comes to Israel and Palestine. They view the Israelis as more worthy of life than the Palestinians. They dehumanize Palestinians. They dehumanize people from those countries. And they view their whole thing from that lens, from that supremacist, arrogant, entitled lens. The United States does the same thing, but the United States, what it definitely does that makes things far worse is that they support them. They support this country committing a genocide militarily and with funds to continue this genocide campaign and these war crimes. And thank you again for your participation. That was from Muhammad Yunus. Studio Rainer saying US is always complaining about immigration. For some reason, they still allow it. The US and many European countries complain about immigration. Firstly, the complaint itself in many cases is unsubstantiated when it comes to immigration itself, because immigration is proven throughout history. Firstly, most of us are immigrants anyway. Secondly, it's proven to be something very beneficial for states if you do it in a legal manner in general. But if you try and make it illegal, people will start doing it illegally. Secondly, these countries complaining about immigration, they don't complain about their own government actions abroad that cause the waves of immigration. Like they went to Afghanistan and Iraq and they don't want immigrants to come to Europe. It's like you went thousands of miles to kill people for no reason, and you're complaining when they're coming to seek safety and shelter. Likewise now, they're causing all of this situation. They were complaining about the wave in Syria when they were a massive participation in everything that happened in Syria, everything bad that happened in Syria. Now you're creating another wave. How? By supporting the country that is causing this massive immigration, isn't it? Isn't Israel forcing people to flee their homes? Where are they going? There's a limit to how much they can go, and some of them will try and flee to other countries too, and to the Western European countries, and to the US as well. And again, complaints, let alone, again, like we said in the beginning, the whole argument of the immigration thing is flawed from the get-go, flawed from the beginning. And thank you, Studio, for that. Tom, Mahmoud, do you think Trump is going to finish with Ukraine and turn to the Middle East? Trump is a fake. Trump is very much all talk, hardly any action. And he's really arrogant, Trump. I mean, If I was there, it wouldn't have happened. He said that about Ukraine. If I was there, it wouldn't have happened. He said that about Hamas. If I was there, it wouldn't have happened. Iran attacking it. We just didn't hear him say if I was there, it wouldn't have happened about the hurricanes that are happening in Florida. Maybe he has a direct connection with God or something, and he wouldn't have allowed him to do something. Right? Astaghfirullah. Anyway. I think he will try and reach some sort of a solution with Ukraine. Again, don't overestimate what he can do. He likes to brag about certain things. Of course, it doesn't take a lot to solve the problem in Ukraine. But to solve the problem in Ukraine, you need to close the financial tap of the military-industrial complex in the US. That's it. Just close the tap of the people benefiting. So if Trump is genuinely, or anyone for that matter, willing to open that confrontation or have a frank back and forth with the MIC in the United States, they can. That's all it takes. But you need to know that these people are having a lot of fun now. They are profiteering, and they would want to try and extend that as much as possible. Like we spoke about the other time, that not only people are profiteering from the war, some people want it to be prolonged. So from their perspective, right, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, any company that supplies anything to do with these crimes happening, if they are benefiting from it, then they would want to prolong it as much as possible. And if there's anyone in the US who is really interested to do that, then you go and target them from home before we go anywhere else. Sol Tibols, if a one-state solution to be implemented in occupied Palestine, what are the odds of Israelis staying or leaving? Well, firstly, some Israelis, they just want to live their life. So from their perspective, I don't think they'd have a big problem with the concept of a one equal state. Why? Because, what their country is telling them already doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Jewish democratic state. I mean, call it as it is. It's a Zionist theocracy. And it even has nothing to do with Judaism. But again, I don't think many Israelis or some Israelis would have a problem with the concept of a one-state solution with equal rights across all of the area. Why? Because, well, firstly, they would start go left and right peacefully. The whole region would open up for them, and we wouldn't be talking about constant threats and wars and what have you. So isn't that a better solution? Of course it is. But their government and the establishment, the Zionist establishment in Israel, always wants to portray a one equal state as a death sentence. Why? Because they want supremacy. So they don't want a death sentence to supremacy. They want Jewish supremacy or Zionist supremacy to be there for as long as possible. So let me tell you from now, some Israelis wouldn't have a problem whatsoever with it. Others would have a problem and swallow it to stay in that land. The others who have a really big problem could tell you, I can no longer live with the idea that I'm somehow equal to these Palestinians or these Muslims or Christians or Arabs, and they would, I don't know, try and go somewhere else to live in denial. But the one-state solution is the solution to solve the problems once and for all. And again, the unfortunate thing is that hardly anyone in the mainstream brings the idea about, and many people in politics constantly talk to us about a two-state solution as if that's even an option now, and again to prolong the life of a supremacist entity instead of calling for equal rights everywhere. And I hope that elaborates. Bujar is saying, Mahmoud, have you watched Mahdi Hassan on Zeteo trying to discredit Jill Stein? Disappointing coming from him. No, I didn't see that, but I'm not surprised. Why? Because he discredited he discredited Jeremy Corbyn when Jeremy Corbyn was leading, and he continued with the wave of anti-Semitism against Jeremy Corbyn. So that was surprising, wasn't it? And then to this day, and when this genocide began, he was condemning the Palestinian side. So again, like, what are you doing? You know, are you supporting the Palestinians, saying they don't have a right to attack Israel? So it's not surprising that he's discrediting Jill Stein or anyone who would have any potential of providing an alternative. And that's where really everyone needs to be careful with everything they read and see from anyone, including people they like. So anything needs to be taken with a pinch of salt and analyzed. But we've seen many instances where you would see poison being handed to you inside the honey, inside the spoon of honey. So we need to be careful of that. But I'm not surprised. And I saw a couple of more people commenting on that. Yeah, like I said, you just need to be careful. And again, it doesn't matter who says what. Always analyze things and read through the patterns of certain people or MSM groups or whatever it is, to know exactly where they stand, especially in crucial moments, by the way, especially in crucial moments, especially in moments of certain change, especially in moments of a historical shift or something very important happening. Alicia is saying, I heard that the resistance knew something was going to happen before the 7th of October from Russia. This was the reason of their action. Do we know anything about it? If you look how quickly Israel had a propaganda campaign so full of lies, the rape, the beheadedness, and the massacres, and including things that they've done against their own civilians on the 7th of October. If we see how quickly they had all of this propaganda machine active and how quickly and fiercely they went on this ethnic cleansing campaign, how quickly they mobilized their allies in the West to go and try and force Egypt to allow the Palestinians into Sinai so they can ethnically cleanse them. The fact that they handed out contracts 2 weeks into the 7th of October. The fact that some of their biggest banks had bets, stock bets, shorting, and made hundreds of millions in profit. All of these things indicate that they had some sort of prior knowledge that something was going to happen. They had a preparation for Gaza, and they had already planned a certain attack with whatever pretext on Gaza. And the Palestinian people or the Palestinian resistance had some sort of knowledge, and they wanted to carry out the attack. Not to the scale of only to prevent that, but that's part of the reason. The other parts that were declared by the Palestinian resistance were primarily to do with prisoners and to do with the suffering of the Palestinians, primarily in Gaza and the West Bank. But if Russia gave them info, I'm not entirely sure about that. I mean, I haven't read anything to that regard, that Russia informed them about anything. But again, it's not that it would be surprising. And Mingla, thank you so much. Is Pakistan supplying Iran JF-17 aircrafts? Again, I haven't heard that. Let's have a look if we have anything here. No, doesn't look like it. I mean, they were considering it. Iran considered buying it at some point. But now I think their priority is with the Russian fighter jets. And Hamid, wa alaikum assalam, dear brother, and greetings to all of our viewers in Iran as well, and everywhere else across the world. Let's take the last couple of questions if we have any before we wrap up. Sour vodka. Does all the double standards and hypocrisy that happened the last year confirm we are now living in a multipolar world? I think we are living in an emerging multipolar world simply because the demands of the majority of the world's population are still not being met. We are living in the end times of a unipolar world led by the United States, where a small minority of the global population is dictating everything for the majority. And when we say that, if we take into consideration the United States, the EU states supporting them, alongside a couple of other of their allies, we're talking about so the northwestern or the Anglosphere, if you want to call it, you're talking about approximately 10 to 15%. Versus 85% of the global south or the eastern world, right? So there's still a high level of dictating going on. We haven't seen a direct confrontation between those either battling for the multipolarity, that is, unless, of course, other countries are looking to take the position of number one, something that we haven't necessarily seen from the Chinese or Russians. Because when you talk about the biggest superpowers, talk about the United States and then China and Russia. Now, the United States is still behaving in the same manner that they've behaved in since post-World War II, with the same levels of arrogance and entitlement and trying to impose their will over the whole world. As a matter of fact, the fact that they are allowing this genocidal entity to do what it's doing in the 21st century is beyond absurd, despite the fact that you have social media, despite the fact that people are aware to their lies, despite the fact that there are so many calls for basic equal human rights in Palestine and other parts of the world. The fact that they're still pressing on that shows their moral decline, so shows their empire decline, so shows their value system decline, if they have any values. You know, the United States and what they've been trying to push for the past century really is just simply making human beings consumers, and economic progress as the only thing that's important in life. Economic progress, making human beings consumers, and the way they viewed populations globally, including their own, by the way, is a material that can be hindrance at some point, worthy of genocide, worthy of mass killing. They are the ones who used the nuclear bombs against the Japanese. They are the ones who killed millions of Vietnamese and their allies, of course, with massacres across the world. So we're not there yet where the other powers have established themselves to a level where they can dictate certain measures to do with the rights given to the populations of the other multipolar parties or multipolar countries, because again, when we talk about multipolarity, we're not going to only talk about China and Russia. We also have other countries too, and it doesn't make sense for several countries to dictate the destiny of the whole world. And when you talk about the Palestinian cause, it has been one of the biggest victims of this unipolarity and dictating things time after time. UN resolutions, the United States vetoing everything to protect a genocidal supremacist entity. But we are definitely going there. What happened in Ukraine started to push for this multipolarity to rise further. What happened in Gaza has accelerated that to a very, very large extent. Alan, Mahmoud, greetings. If the US refuels Israeli planes their attack on Iran, do you think Iran would take that lightly? I don't think they will take that lightly. And I think the Americans, the American administration, and anyone trying to participate would try and give any sort of excuse to Iran. The question is how visible everything would be. I mean, the countries in the region like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar said Israel is not going to be doing anything. From our territories, they said that to Washington. Now, Israel, of course, needs some support at the end of the day. You know, they can't have a massive operation at that scale without coordination from the US. Again, the US is Israel and Israel is the US. But to what level would Iran see that as like an excuse to, you know, start destroying certain bases of the US or what have you? It depends on the scale and what happens with it, and if it's confirmed and verified from Iran as well, if they can prove it as well. And they've warned the US administration that if you do participate, or if any countries that host your bases participate in an attack on us, we will view them as a target. Thank you, Alan. Let's go to your next question. And Golden Sun, thank you so much for that. And greetings to everyone in Michigan. Samir, what is the red line for Hezbollah? Will they wait till Israel bomb all cities like Gaza? You see, I'm not entirely sure what the red line is and what would crossing such red line for Hezbollah means in terms of their response for Israel. But based from our observation of what they're doing, they clearly started it as a supporting front. They declared that this wasn't the all-out war, that we are going against Israel. That's from the beginning. Okay, that's a year ago. And we had, of course, developments from back then. And what they've done has been very much calculated to a level where they had constant attacks on Israel based on Israel's retaliation, not only in Gaza, but also against them and how far they go in, and making sure that that level of retaliation against Israel that is affecting their military, their economy, their settlers, their general sense of safety, their general psyche is still maintained for as long as they need to, and they are preparing for a very long war. So if we had the assassination of their Secretary General, who is a very important figure, not just for them, but for many people across the world, and they still continued with the same principle of response without breaking all of the tools, then that means they are not a movement that is emotionally dragged or engaged in something if their opponents want them to be responding in an emotionally charged or hate charged manner. That might not satisfy some of the crowds or some of their supporters, but from their perspective, it is delivering the goods. What are the goods to them? Maintaining the level of attacks, expanding it based on the other expansion, extracting as much and exhausting as much power and resources from the military, exhausting and draining the economy, defeating the mentality and the psyche in Israel and in general, and continuing to do so for as long as this continues. Do you understand? So again, if they targeted their Secretary General and we haven't seen like 7, 8, 9, 10,000 missiles all at once, that means clearly they view things from a calculated manner, and like the vision that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah had before his assassination, that vision is still being implemented. So they're trying to send the message to Israel, okay, you tried to take down our rational leader for us to behave in an irrational manner against you. And again, the case of rational or irrational is something arguable because you're having a genocidal entity and their opponents, well, they have many excuses to destroy the whole country and whatever's inside it based on, again, this genocidal entity's actions and mass killings and deliberate genocide and infanticide. But again, Hezbollah are not doing that. So from their perspective, they are continuing with their calculated manner because to them, this is the path that will lead them to achieve their objectives and will definitely lead to the Israeli failure. Okay, let's go to your next question. Again, if anyone has anything for me, if you wouldn't mind highlighting it just so that I don't miss it. And ma'am, assalamu alaikum, Mahmoud, isn't that genocidal and occupational forces getting resupplied due to Iranian missiles smoking out their defense systems? They always have the US resupplying them. That's very normal. And, that could be an interesting observation because sometimes, with the levels of usage, you could be running out of certain missiles. That's why, the THAAD gets in and what have you. It's an interesting observation. And thank you for that. And Esdras Santos, thank you. Said this historic moment demands an emerging power as belligerent as the US. China is proving to be too soft, and this could cost not only China but also the global South and the planet itself dearly. Thank you for that. I mean, again, when it comes to the Chinese and how they view certain responses when it comes to the US or Russia or whatever, they have their reasons for, of course, behaving in a certain manner. One thing I would say, though, is that these people are rational players. So when you hear the US officials talking in a certain manner about China and Russia, and you hear the leaders of these countries coming out and talking in a rational manner, in a non-hostile manner, uh, it's really interesting. You think, oh wow, these people are genuinely, like responsible, and they are interested in good dealings with the rest of the world. So why are the leaders in the US and certain Western countries always having this poisonous, toxic tone, whether when it comes to other nations or other people, and constantly, spewing venom and divisions, and blatantly supporting a genocidal entity, right? What's up with this, level of depravity? And clearly, they're not willing to, China and Russia, go to the same lengths as the US to be the global leader. Because number one, they don't necessarily want to be the world's police like the US. Secondly, they have certain things that prevent them from going and occupying and dictating what other people do. They clearly have a different vision. The United States, European countries, many of the arrogant Western countries, they don't have a problem in dictating what other people do. They think they're entitled. Like, look at how they speak with Gaza. Like, oh, Hamas shouldn't play a role in Gaza. They should go out. We need a technocratic government. Whereas Russia and China would say, oh, listen, let's try and reach an agreement where and we're not imposing our will on you, by the way, we're just advising, where the others trying to impose their will. Different approaches, right? Arrogance versus, a level of, humbleness, you know what I mean? And trying to kind of reach a solution. And that's the way forward, really, not the arrogant dictating way. They constantly preach about democracy and this and that, and they try and dictate what other people do. It's like, who are you to go and tell the people of Gaza who to choose and who not to choose? Firstly, are you even siding with the people of Gaza facing a genocide or not? Or are you supporting their oppressor? And if you're supporting their oppressors, who are you to even come and tell them anything? Who are you? Who do you think you are? Who brought you this sense of entitlement and arrogance? Take a step back, relax. Relax, and you're not entitled to tell people what to do and what not to do. And again, the Chinese, they won't go to the same lengths as the US to forcefully implement global hegemony, a militaristic oligarchy. That's what they are. They tell the Russians oligarchs. They are the military oligarchy, the US. Aren't they? Money controlled with power and enforcing its will through power to get more money and power. Isn't that what they're doing? That's what they're doing. That is called a militaristic oligarchy. And that's what they do. And thank you for that, my friend. Studio Rainer, again, thank you. You said it's a global resistance. Modern economics is what made people stop having kids. Animals don't breed under captivity. Again, it's one of those same arguments, and that all falls under the view of financial development as the great be-all and end-all of everything. Financial progress, and only financial progress. Viewing everything from an economic perspective. Calculating people's net worth based on their possessions and assets and stocks and disregarding anything that they have as a human being, a contribution to humanity, the level of good they do to others, education, whatever it is, right? And that is, you said animals don't breed under captivity. I mean, that's worse than the animal world, really, the animal kingdom, has more morals than this. But that's what the United States has been spreading all along, you know. No regard, as a matter of fact, discouraging family, morals, ethics, anything to do with that, and focusing on, again, only financial progress by any means necessary through selfishness and greed and stepping on other people and all of that. And it is a global resistance. It's a global resistance. And it's a global resistance that does not just stop with this country. It stretches out because, again, many things have been revealed in the past year. And one thing that's for sure is that it does not have borders. You know, the problem does not have borders. And thank you so much. That was from Studio Rainer. And David Nathan is also saying here, I think indiscriminate strikes would be the very last resort. I think you were referring to Hezbollah. They see the inherent value in only targeting combatants. Interesting observation. And they also, if you notice, target the locations that are the main operation hubs and control centers that engage and make this genocide machine work. So from their perspective, if I go and bomb, for example, parts of Israel that are very densely populated and destroy buildings in Tel Aviv and kill 500 people all at once, is that going to stop the genocide machine? No. Is it going to stop the genocide in Gaza? No. Is it going to stop their capability to fly a plane from there to here and attack me? No. What would do that? Attacking the military base, attacking the military industrial complex, attacking the combatants on the ground, attacking the facilities that have the weapons inside them, attacking the airbase, attacking the navy, attacking the things that are being used to conduct these aggressions against me. And even if they don't stop them completely, at least affect them to a certain extent, which was the philosophy of Hezbollah ever since the beginning. Why? Because Israel sent out 2 divisions from a very early stage to Lebanon. Those 2 divisions, if it wasn't for Hezbollah's participation, could have been conducting more depraved massacres in Gaza. So this is how they're viewing it. And it's a really interesting observation, again, from David Nathan. And thank you very much for that. And Blank Stares, peace and blessings to you and your family and everyone else here on the stream. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. And again, thank you for your comments and apologies. We won't reach all of them, of course, but we'll try and take as much as possible. And Elvira, Gabriela, Velasco, Bigler, thank you very much for your super. SA Max Legend, the USA is going broke supporting the psychopath and his criminal. How long can the USA keep up? It's not sustainable. You see, if we try and look at it from, okay, spending money and how comes you can spend all of that money, you'd ask yourself that question. But that's not how the system works in the United States. The United States prints money on demand, and they use how the dollar is viewed in general, because the value of their currency is how really it is perceived globally as a safe currency, something for us to trade with. And there are other economies, of course, and one of them is their war economy, really, and continue to print that money and give it away. And again, they Who's going broke? You said the USA is going broke. Who's going broke in the United States? It's not the people who are profiteering from the war. They're not going broke. They're filling their pockets. You're going broke if you're a US citizen. You're going broke. Why? Because they're taking your money. They're not reinvesting that money they've stolen from you as a taxpayer and bringing it back in terms of, for example, healthcare or education or development plans, community plans, supporting small businesses or whatever it is. But they're going and sending it as foreign aid to countries who they like on the condition that they buy from the big military industrial complex companies in the US. So in many cases, the money doesn't even leave the US. It simply goes from the pockets of the people to the pockets of the rich, and they become more and more rich. They have been doing that all along, and they still do it, and they still get away with it. We can talk about it here. How many people are talking here? I'm talking to how many people? A couple of thousand people. I mean, in one live stream, okay, if you want to count them, a couple of million views in general. But in the grand scheme of things, the United States still controlling, the narrative in general when it comes to the masses who they want to brainwash and control to continue and take that money and legitimize what they're doing. And there is no uproar. There is no challenging to that. They can get away with it. They have been getting away with it. And they're still getting away with it. I mean, they're still getting away with throwing money from their own people to support a war criminal. Multiple war criminals. And they're getting away with it, and no one is stopping them. Not the law, not the Congress, not the people, not the protests, not the talk on social media. Nothing is stopping them. And that's the harsh reality. The question is, how can that be changed? And again, you're talking about a long process, many things that can be done when it comes to legislation, the powers that these people have, how far they can go approving certain things in that manner. Because don't forget, things that allow them to pass these massive budgets and massive amounts of money and support for abroad are certain legislations that they've done in back roads and alleyways that are perfectly legal, bypassing Congress, bypassing scrutiny, bypassing this and that, to do what they do. And thank you so much for that from SA Max Legend. And Irene Z, thank you so much for your super. Says, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mahmoud. Please invite Brother Richard Medhurst. He needs his voice to be heard. Jazakallah khairan. Well, the invitation is open, of course, for Richard Medhurst. I actually contacted Richard a couple of months ago. I don't think I've heard back from him. But I mean, if he's with us or if you are in contact with him, then please, by all means, invite him to contact me, and I'd be more than happy to have him on our show. And thank you so much. That was from Irene. And let's go to your next one. HK saying, I accidentally donated $2 to a Zionist streamer without knowing once. May Allah forgive me. Oh, if it's a mistake, then no problem. If it's a mistake, then no problem, my friend. Okay. I think that was about it for tonight. Yes, we'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much again, everyone, for tuning in for another show. Thank you so much for all of your comments. And again, apologies if I didn't reach all of them. Thank you for everyone who sent supers. Irene, Z, Elvira, HK, Lisa, Studio, Rainer, Esdras, 1984, Sarajevo, Golden Sun, Mingla, Muhammad Yunus, Sean Hurl, Omar Zabani, Ralph, Stephen Burrows, Sour Vodka, Johan Bijou, George. Thank you all for your participation, and thank you all for your comments and for your wonderful input, and thank you for your support. And again, of course, sorry if I didn't reach the majority of your comments. And thank you, Yadu Walker. Thank you so much for your super, much appreciated. I'll hopefully be with you tomorrow. I might have video after this live stream. In the meantime, stay blessed, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, evening, day, or night, depending on where you are. And I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.